Evening, everyone. I think that we'll go ahead and get started. To begin this evening's presentation, I'd like to begin with introductions of all of our groups for the benefit of all of us that are participating and also any members of the public that might be viewing. So members of the design team that are here with us this evening, representing the collaborative are Ray Mickham and Justin Vogel. Hogenemeyer Design Group, we have Jason Collert, Dane Huntley, Scott Schrader, and Greg Telecki. Representing City Council this evening, we have Greg Robinette, Sandy Rowland, John Zanfordino, Rachel Phipps, Bill Harold, Neocles Leontis, and Mark Hollenbaugh, President of the City Council, had a conflict, but he is hoping to join us before the end of the meeting. And representing the Board of Public Utilities, we have Megan Newlove, Trevor Jesse, Amy Kraft Ahrens, Brett Pogan, and Andy Wagner. And I would also point out that the city team on this project has been myself, Lori Treader, our administrator or municipal administrator, Joe Fawcett, our assistant municipal administrator, Brian O'Connell, director of public utilities, Brian Kraft, director of public works, and Brian Bouchon, the finance director. So let's get right to it. As we've navigated through this tumultuous year, we've had to recognize that some of our goals and objectives for this year needed to be delayed or restructured as issues emerged and more pressing matters dominated our schedules. In a recent council meeting, I reviewed the status of our 2020 goals, and at that time, and as I've mentioned to you, city staff, and others over the past months, I noted that while we must be attentive to the important current issues and the unprecedented challenges which we now face, we must not allow the pandemic to paralyze us, and we must continue to look forward and position the city to take full advantage of opportunities that present themselves. With that in mind, and in consideration that the information being presented to you this evening is the result of decades of efforts, study, and consideration, I encourage us to allow thoughts of the future to temporarily take priority as we hear a report from well-qualified and respected professionals about the building feasibility study related to the future of Bowling Green City Building. Funding for tonight's report was included in the 2019 budget, but the issue for consideration, determining where to house our city administrative services, is a topic that extends back several decades. Those of us who grew up in Bowling Green and with enough years under our belts to recall times before the building in which we sit was the city building may recall that there was a time when our police, fire, and many administrative services were housed in the present police facility at 175 West Worcester Street, with utilities in a separate location where the electric division is currently located at 515 East Worcester. In preparing for this evening, we dug back in the files and examined the history of settling our current location and also reviewed the length of time we've been contemplating a course of action to deal with various deficiencies and impediments associated with this building. That history is quite extensive. However, in the interest of time, I'll stick to the highlights. One of the files, which tells part of the story as to how the city building arrived here at 304 North Church Street, is a series of documents, statements, reports, legislation, and memos from early 1974. The growing community clearly had a need for additional space to serve its citizens, but where to locate those additional services was a source of lively discussion. Fresh off becoming a charter city that was approved by the voters in the November 1972 election, the city organization was changing, and organizational leaders and Mayor Bartlett considered various options, including locating the city building and an expanded facility at 515 East Worcester Street, which is again the current location of the electric division and the Court Street Fire Station. And they even considered a location on East Poe Road, where which is roughly the location of the current Public Works facility. Those plans, while obviously not what came to fruition and would have taken those services out of the heart of our downtown, show us that sometimes you have to consider various options before you find the right one that is the right fit at the right time. I believe that the presentation you will see tonight, one that follows lots of exploration and discussion, particularly in the last 2 decades, presents a concept that is the right fit at the right time. Those lively conversations in the spring of 1974 ultimately resulted in several city services moving into the building here at 304 North Church Street in 1975. We should also note that between the time that this building was Church Street Elementary School and the city building, the building also housed the Wood County Public Library. While serving Bowling Green citizens from 1975 to the present, the building has seen some modest upgrades, the most notable being ADA upgrades, and also changes to address the changing needs of both the citizens and the staff. The reports of 1974 and 1975 note that one of the reasons for consolidation were to house the computer. I wonder what the people of 1974 would think of the technologies that we now utilize, including some of you joining us at home this evening via Zoom. Throughout the 1990s, the building seemed to be a popular source of study, particularly amongst BGSU classes, as various renderings for additions are part of our archives. One includes a large addition to house records. With the evolution of electronic archiving, those needs have decreased significantly. And again, we must consider that we've come up with the right fit at the right time. In the mid-2000s, there was a period of active and serious study about the need for improvements to the city building. The conversation was driven by concerns related to the need to adequately serve the citizens and also concerns about the conditions in the current building. Mayor Quinn appointed a committee that worked on various concepts in 2004, 2005, and the years that followed, including looking at numerous existing facilities, sites, and concepts. Mayor Quinn was firm in his belief, one that was later strongly echoed by Mayor Edwards, that any future building must be in downtown Bowling Green. I also share this view. Also in the time frame where serious study of the facility was occurring, the city began to manage long-term debt to leave space for borrowing for the new facility. While the Great Recession created a delay in the financial preparedness, recognition of the need and capacity for borrowing for a new city building has long been a factor in capital budgeting and debt management. The impediments that spurred discussion starting over 15 years ago are still problematic, and in the intervening years, additional challenges and problems associated with the current building have continued to grow. Now, having worked in this building daily for almost a year, the urgency to act is even more evident to me. Our design team will share the details of the building's deficiencies in their presentation to follow. The timing for tonight's study is also advantageous, as our friends at the Wood County Committee on Aging are well underway with constructing their new building on South Grove Street, and the city of Bowling Green owns the building at 305 North Main Street that will be vacated in the spring of 2021. The building at 305 North Main Street, which was a former post office and has served the Bowling Green location and office for the Wood County Committee on Aging since the early 1980s, was an important component of this feasibility study. In its current condition and configuration, 305 North Main Street shares many of the detriments of the current city building, including ADA challenges, layout impediments, aging infrastructure, and mounting deferred maintenance costs. The building also has had numerous basement flooding issues over the years. However, and while I look forward to the professional examination and opinion on this issue, I would be remiss if I didn't point out one very significant difference between the city building and the senior center, and that is the current front facade of the senior center holds important historical relevance and architectural significance and is an attractive part of the North Main Street area. I feel strongly that it is our responsibility to consider this factor when discussing the options available to best utilize that site for a new city building. Additionally, our own Historic Preservation Commission has identified the building as a community asset, and it was important that due consideration to the building be included in this analysis. I recognize that presenting this in the year of COVID-19 is far from ideal. When we started this process back in 2019, it would have been difficult to imagine the current challenges. Yet, in addition to the fact that the deficiencies of our current building and the needs of the organization will only increase in coming years, the financial conditions for borrowing money are very favorable right now. As previously mentioned, long-term debt has been managed in both utility funds and the 4018 Capital Improvement Fund to allow for borrowing and the annual payments on this debt. It is doubtful that a delay will result in decreased building cost or more favorable market conditions for borrowing. As all of you are aware, Bowling Green is highly structured and methodical in its funding distribution. Funds designated to capital improvements are present in several parts of our financial structure, including the income tax distribution, where significant allocations are made to both the Water Sewer Capital Improvement Fund and the Capital Improvement Fund, which is used for non-utility equipment and facility needs. As I mentioned earlier, the city has been positioning itself for borrowing for a new city building or renovation for many years. This means that this project will not involve new taxes or increases in utility rates, and it will not impact city finances for operations and services. In closing, it's my opinion that Bowling Green citizens deserve a city building where they can access services in a modern, comfortable, and efficient facility in their historic downtown. They deserve to be able to attend a public meeting in a room of sufficient size that does not create the need to overflow into a hallway or to stand outside. City employees deserve to work in a healthy environment. We have studied, we have considered, we have planned, and it is time to move forward. I'm excited for you to see the product of our work over the past year on how we can take this next step on behalf of our community. And I'm going to turn it over to Lori, who will review the process for hiring our experts and set the stage for this evening's presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Well, thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, with knowledge that the Wood County Committee on Aging was moving and the mounting concerns with this facility, the 2019 budget included funding for architectural and engineering services related to a city building feasibility study. The Board of Public Utilities and the City Council both made formal action in the summer of 2019 to authorize Brian O'Connell and I to request qualifications from firms to perform this work. Statements of qualifications were accepted in late September 2019. 6 were received and scored by a committee consisting of myself, Utilities Director O'Connell, Assistant Municipal Administrator Fawcett, Public Works Director Kraft, and at the time, Council President, then became Mayor-elect, and finally Mayor Osbacher. We interviewed 3 firms who each brought great perspective and expertise to area buildings. The selected applicant was a partnership between Pogemeyer Design Group and the Collaborative. The pairing had impressive skills in the technical and visionary aspects needed for the project and were determined to be the most qualified to look critically at our current buildings and prepare the proposal you will see this evening. We also felt that the group had a keen understanding of Bowling Green. As our group worked together, this has proven to be true, and we've been very pleased at the professionalism, the quality of work, the collegial challenges exchanged, and the final recommendation, which you will soon view. Just to quickly review, the scope of work that was tasked to the group included the following. They were asked to review and evaluate the current city building at 304 North Church Street and the building at 305 North Main Street. They were asked to recommend a course of action related to the conclusions about the existing facilities and sites, to provide recommendations on architectural styles and durable building materials to aesthetically fit with the downtown while considering life expectancy and maintenance costs. They were asked to provide architectural renderings of the building and site options, which were also to include the city-owned home at 316 North Church Street. Provide recommendations on sustainability options to consider for incorporation, estimate costs for design, engineering, demolition, construction, equipment, and furniture. Present recommendations on design, construction schedule, and proposed phasing for construction. And finally, make a presentation to the City Council and the Board of Public Utilities, which is where we find ourselves this evening. Note that previous councils, mayors, and administrations before us have emphasized the importance of keeping this building in the downtown. We believe that we are an economic boost to our downtown community. We have over 50 employees and we generate a lot of activity here. We aspire to be a generator for the downtown. We've been happy and cooperative neighbors to the much admired Wood County District Public Library next door. And we are located strategically to other government buildings, including the police station, the new Wood County Committee on Aging, and the Wood County Courthouse. All of us contribute to a stable vibrancy to the core of our downtown community. Before I turn it over, I want to again compliment this team. As our group worked with you, all of you, we appreciated your patience, your measured approaches, your responsiveness, the challenges you guided us through, and the clear expertise you brought to this endeavor. We are very pleased with this product that they are going to present to you, and I do want to, as a side note to those of you at home and here, that Joe will be emailing you this presentation in a little while here. And with that, I am pleased to now share our presentation to the Board of Public Utilities and City Council. And I turn it to Jason, I believe. Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jason Collard. I'm the project manager for Pogemeyer Design Group. And Lori, thank you for those kind words, and we've enjoyed working with your team as well. We were again tasked, as Lori mentioned, to initially go through the existing buildings and evaluate them, see what it would take to whether it would be beneficial to renovate them or look at, moving to demolition and potentially looking at a new building. So initially, I'm going to go through kind of our initial process and talking about each of the buildings individually. Also presenting with me will be Shane Huntley with Pogemeyer. He'll be reviewing the site portion of the project. And then Ray Mickham and Justin Fogel will be touching on the building design. And then I will get back into it and discuss the budgeting and some things at the end. So to start with the building analysis. So we came into the buildings, we did a thorough review of what we could see. And we've looked at both this building and the previous post office up front along Main Street. And some of our findings were starting here at 304 North Church Street. It would take major interior renovation. I mean, I think you've all seen how unfunctional the space is. So it'd take a major interior renovation to try to accommodate the contemporary needs that were put forth by the committee and the team from BG. Some other highlights that we noted, there's some masonry joint failure present. So there would be some upgrades that we would need to do and repair of the exterior. There's issues with meeting current energy codes and getting it up to a more comfortable environment, as well as the HVAC, mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems were all in need of major repairs and replacement. And when you get into these types of old buildings, you run into more costs dealing with trying to route it through existing spaces and dealing with that. Some other issues that we noticed would be accessibility issues with the multiple levels, just making it more convenient and accessible for both the community as well as just elevator access and things like that. And then other building code issues that we ran into, just trying to expand a building like this runs into, some complications and things that impact cost. So through that, we analyzed it and looked at it from multiple different options, and the conclusion was, just from a cost standpoint, it makes more sense to demolish this as opposed to renovate it. We think in the end, number one, you're going to get a better product, and two, from a cost standpoint, I think it's going to end up being a lot better option for you on that end as well. Then looking at the building, the existing post office where the senior center currently resides, there's really no major structural deficiencies. The mayor had mentioned some water issues in the basement that we noticed as well. It does have, and mayor had mentioned that as well, this historical significance, mainly on the Main Street facade. As you get towards the back of the building, that tends to drop off a little bit, but that stone facade on the front really is what catches, I think, everyone's eye. The construction methods used, there's a second floor in there. Looks like it was added on after the fact. So it's real easy to go in and remove that and open that space up with really little effort. And then the same thing at that facility as well. The mechanical and electrical systems are just at the end of their useful life and really need to be replaced. And looking at it, they're really currently broken up into several locations. So it's, a lot of smaller systems that feed that. So there's some more efficient ways of doing things now. And then the same thing with the electrical service. It currently utilizes outdated equipment that we would look to upgrade. So looking at the facade, and I'm going to ask Justin to join me, and he'll talk about a few things in regard to the building as well. But looking at the facade, it's really overall in pretty good shape. The stone's in good shape. I mean, you'll see some areas, especially at the top of that little gable there, where there's some deterioration. Some of the dental work is deteriorating. But there's ways of repairing that and restoring that, and even bringing in new pieces of stone to replace some. And there's ways of weathering that stone so that it'll actually look like it's been there and that it wasn't replaced. So you're not going to see some light new piece of stone sitting there. There's some methods and things that can be done to tie that in. So the key, we're trying to key on that front facade and see what we tried to see what we could do to preserve that piece. And I'll turn it over to Justin to continue on.
Hi, I'm Justin Fogel with the Collaborative. And as we've been kind of working through these options, there's a lot of character built into this east elevation. It's got, the historical value of being kind of nationally registered. And there's also a lot of detail that is built in that's really hard to replicate and address within a new building as in a cost-effective way. And as Jason mentioned, yeah, there are some areas where there's some deterioration, but those areas can be cleaned. They can be repaired in ways that are not destructive or problematic. And there's also kind of a lot of really nice detailing at kind of that front sandstone area. You can see on the left-hand side, we have an image of the brick portion of the building, which is to the west, and there's a lot less character. It's nicely proportioned, but I feel like the main focus really was this front facade. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Shane for a few thoughts on site. Just keeping that front facade really kind of drove how we were looking at and approaching the building and the site.
Good evening, everyone. Shane Huntley with Pokemeyer Design Group. So when we look at the existing site, first thing I notice is there's a ton of hardscape, a lot of asphalt, both buildings, a lot of roof space, not a lot of green areas, and the green areas that are on site are kind of scattered around. You can see on the bottom right image, there's landscape islands, which are mostly mulched, and some spaces in between sidewalks in the building. The actual percentages on the slide there, it's actually 87% impervious or hardscaped area, and then only 13% green space. So one thing we looked at is trying to improve that, get a little more green on the site, and hopefully in some, bigger areas that are noticeable and nice looking. Another thing about the existing site, there's no stormwater detention. The current, all the rainwater goes to a combined sewer that runs along Oak Street. And currently there's nothing restricting that at all. So everything washes off and goes straight to the sewer, potentially, putting a lot of a flow going on those. So there's some potential there also to improve that. Parking. The parking is scattered. The traffic is interesting here. There's a lot of one-way areas. There's honestly 3 different parking lots that are kind of all connected. So I'm sure when we're driving around here, you get stopped at stop signs that are kind of interesting. Gotta look out and keep watching out. So there's also some potential to improve the overall access and the parking, which is currently insufficient for the administration building's needs. You want to jump in?
So as we were looking at the site, a few things stood out to us right away. We looked at the existing admin building, we looked at the senior center, and we looked at kind of the flow through the site and the traffic flow. And what started to really make a lot of sense was vacating that north property, vacating the house to allow for kind of a primary flow of traffic through the north of the site, off of Main Street, kind of through to Church Street. This also helped us to create kind of more of an efficient flow for that parking area and maintain a certain amount of the old post office in place. As we kept exploring, we were looking at ideas of where could we fit in green space adjacent to the senior center, how much of the senior center or kind of historic post office would we take, would we keep? And that all really kind of drove our siting of the building and our kind of overall approach.
Yeah, so what you see here then would be the proposed site plan that we put together, kind of showing what Justin mentioned, just a main access going from Main Street to Church Street on the north side, with a one single parking lot with room for staff parking on the north side of the proposed building. The footprint of the building there, they'll get into that in a little bit. But what we show here is to make enough room for that and also to provide some green space. We're showing portions of Oak Street being vacated to kind of improve the flow of traffic, limit access points, and again, provide a more aesthetically appeasing site. So we've managed on this site plan to reduce the impervious area to 72 opposed to 87. So it's a lot more green space, and the green space that is shown is, in bigger chunks on the south side of that building. Multiple spots on the north side there. Also with the parking, it'll be sufficient for the needs of the city. Speaking with them and what they require and currently don't have. So as far as improved traffic flow, currently it's shown coming off of North Main Street. Right now that is one way, and this would show it as being the same, although the width that we've shown there, it has the potential to be both ways, but that would be pending further study if that is feasible or not. But the drive on the north going to North Church Street would be our two-way access, while the Oak Street Drive would remain one way out to church. Is there anything you want to add to?
Yeah, we're really trying to work to expand the amount of green space on the site and develop kind of more public areas adjacent to the building. As you kind of walk along Main Street, the existing post office is right along Main Street, and the parking is pretty much right up to Main Street as well. So we're trying to create a little bit more of a buffer around the building and provide some more of those more kind of public areas, kind of in the dark orange that you'll see on the site as more kind of a plaza that's adjacent to the building. You'll see those a little bit later in the presentation. So kind of getting into the design, we talked about, maintaining a portion of the old post office. And that really drove kind of the development of the plan and working on the site. To the left-hand side, you've got Main Street. And what we're proposing is preserving the sandstone facade, where demolishing the rest of the old post office. A lot of that kind of on the west side, the west side is kind of originally was mail room, kind of back of house areas, and not as, for the type of function we'd be doing, not as historically relevant, I guess I would say. Working within the constraints of keeping that front portion of the sandstone historic facade in place, we really started to develop the plan along kind of a central axis that went through the building. You'll see kind of on the right-hand side is where that facade would be. The dashed line is kind of where the existing would be. And then the outline of the new in kind of the gray. We're really trying to develop the overall plan along that central axis, centralized kind of around that existing building, where the council chambers, we envision locating the council chambers in that kind of old facade area, and then building kind of a larger public lobby off of that, which would provide access to planning and grants, administration, tax, public works, and utilities, each with kind of their own waiting areas and kind of queuing space to help alleviate some of the concerns that you have with the existing building. Within those suites of utilities, public works, finance, and planning and grants commission, they're all kind of located within a suite, kind of an internal suite, that are connected, so to allow for increased collaboration between departments, also providing kind of more of a kind of a very clear front face for that public activity. Restrooms would be located off of that main lobby as well, and then you'll see kind of the staff entry coming in off of the north side of the building, where we're envisioning having kind of that staff parking. Ray, feel free.
Yeah, hopefully those of you on Zoom can see where the cursor is going. But one other thing I wanted to point out is, from a site organization standpoint, you might remember that there was, I guess, what we're calling a staff parking zone down through here, and a primarily public parking zone in the west. And so the way we envision this work is the public is kind of coming in the front door, and they're going to the planning office or utilities or paying their taxes, or coming to a meeting in the council chambers. But the staff can come through a secure door and go up the stairs, or come into these office suites, or come to the elevator. And also city council can queue into the council chambers through that staff entry and through a large conference room that is adjacent to the council chambers. And, you know, at the end of a contentious meeting, perhaps, can slip out the side door and not have to go through. I don't know if you've ever had any experience with that, but sometimes that's a nice feature. So really this, you know, the ground floor plan is about public interaction, also getting staff and your council kind of in and out of this building in a bit more discreet a way. And the lobby would be fairly open, but each one of these doors would be securable. You would have some public restrooms that face that lobby, but the staff would have their own restrooms kind of here back of house in the suites themselves. So hopping up a floor, we've got a kind of a grand staircase that takes you from the lower lobby to the upper lobby, or the elevator will take you up there, or this more like egress or staff stair. And you've got a bit of a racetrack that runs around that second floor, and you're sitting under kind of a daylit space, because we got some windows above this double-story space to let some light down into that core. But from here, you have the suites, like coming into the mayor's office here, and that senior staff. We've got law and finance kind of in the suite that sort of runs west from there. And a bit across the way, we've got the IT suite. And we've got some gray area here, which we know we're going to need mechanical. We haven't gotten into a lot of detail about that. You're going to need some storage. You're going to need electrical and servers and things. And so that's kind of located up here where it's kind of out of sight, but easy to get at as well. And then a staff lounge here that would kind of be parked above the entry, have a small kitchenette associated with it. So I think, and the council chambers would be the height of the old post office space, which was a lofted space. And those arched windows now that are kind of cut off by a floor that was built in there would be restored to the original height of that space. And so it would be really all new on the interior, but that kind of vaulted space would be there like it was originally. And so this will have a kind of a classiness and you know, not overly grand, but I think like an appropriate grandeur for the type of space it is for the functions that go on. And wonder let's run through the kind of the exteriors, and then we come back to any one of these for questions and input. As Justin mentioned, you know, everything sort of takes its cue from that old facade, which we think is the most valuable part and the part worth saving. And the building fairly symmetrically is arranged behind it with that kind of day-lit double-story lobby space behind it. But we wanted to intentionally make a break rather than trying to make this building look like it was built in the late 1800s as the old post office was. That it would have a bit more of a contemporary feel, that it would be compatible in terms of materials. We don't think that cut sandstone is probably something you want to spend the budget on, because you know, these types of construction materials and techniques are extremely expensive to do today. But we can do bricks and some sparing use of stone and do a building that is very compatible with that historical building and feels like it is something that is built in today's generation and it is a modern building. So you see some fields of plain brick, and then you see some large areas of glass. We have some of these meeting spaces. Moving you know, the way that the building faces Main Street, what we like to do is take, you know, United States Post Office off of that entablature and put the city of Bowling Green back there. And some of that stone is kind of deteriorated. So as Jason said, we've looked into, you know, how we can do that. That looks very doable to get something in there that matches and looks like it might have been original, but restoration of glass. But the kind of restoration work that's happening here is happening in a small part of the building, right, rather than trying to take on the whole building. And the building behind it is a little bit more background that does not try to compete with it, but just lets that old facade, kind of steal the show, as it were. This is as we kind of turn the corner along what we would like to see as a vacated Oak Street that might become a public green space between the library and the new city building, maintaining the old flagpole. And then we're coming around here. This is from the west. So this is from the parking lot side, and that would be the front door. And you see, the building looks a bit more contemporary and a bit less symmetrical from this view. Signage identifying it maybe on a low wall in front. This is swinging a bit more to the north. So you see the staff parking here on the left-hand side and that staff entry and the doors here. And then the main public entry being here. Maybe some plaza spaces with some outdoor seating in front. And I jumped too far. So before we get into some of the thoughts about sustainability and LEED, I wonder if we might open it up to some questions about the survey, the design approach, the exterior images, et cetera. Want to do a little short Q&A session?
Some questions. Thank you very much. It's gratifying to see that so much work has been done and somehow consolidated into a really concise presentation. That's very impressive from someone that can't do that very well. As far as the history, thank you, Mayor. I was particularly interested because I was on the city building ad hoc committee, and one of to echo what the mayor said, one of the primary factors, we identified a number of factors, assigned weight to it, looked at various locations, various options, and remaining in the downtown was very, very important. I'm pleased with that. How far this way would the building come?
Well, let's go back to the, we do have a slide that tries to demonstrate that. What you see here is the outline of the existing building. So as you look out these windows
Got it.
and see the old senior center, that exterior wall that comes, and the kitchen is kind of in this area. So the new building does not come much past that line. It's just a wider footprint. And
The reason I asked is one of the things we knew was that there was cables buried out here. Looks like that won't be an issue if you're not coming far.
I was just going to add the existing exit here onto Oak Street. That's pretty much in line with where the new exit will be. So that kind of gives you a frame of reference as far as how the site lays out.
And is there a basement?
No, there's not.
There is now, but
Right.
just didn't work.
So what we'll do is we're only keeping a portion of that building. So where we demo, we'll just fill that. And then that small piece of that front will fill in, and that'll eliminate any of the water infiltration issues that have been present in the past. And we'll get a good solid floor built in there.
So it's no basement, 2 stories. And you touched on the security, so that's good. Is there room for expansion? Because that's just the nature of building. Just trying to foresee in the future, is there some area there that's kind of earmarked, if you will?
so if we were to expand this building, what we would probably want to do is go north on both floors, both up and down. Because, we could look at coming closer to this sidewalk, or maybe relocating some or all of this staff parking area. This is where the footprint would make most sense. The building, the major departments like utilities and public works, there's a pretty good sized footprint here. This side of the building is a little lighter programmatically. And, we could put another bay on the building. I think we had some
We have-
discussion of that.
Yeah, we have some growth built in internally too.
Okay, so
Additional offices
when you
would
designed it,
be
you,
use this
you
conference.
you have an out in that if we do, when you design it, a possibility of extending it, that's already built in.
Yeah, it would likely happen here, and I think the point that Justin is making
Yeah.
is that like the offices and workstation counts are more than what you need the day you'll move in.
Right.
So,
And there's a number of conference rooms. I noticed you mentioned council chambers and a conference room right next door.
yeah, so the blue are offices, the green are meeting spaces. And you notice that there's one here and one here. These are really kind of shared between finance and planning. So this is the room you take somebody who wants to have a confidential conversation about their taxes, or it can be used by planning when it's not in use. So these guys are shared over here. Similarly, utilities and public works shares 3 smaller meeting rooms, 4 to 6 people, maybe 8 in this one. And then you've got a large conference room, and this is probably where you go to executive session, and you have larger meetings. It's there to kind of play a supportive and complementary role with the council chambers. And as we go upstairs, you see that the mayor's office suite has a conference room, and law and finance have a couple of conference rooms available.
Where would the clerk of council be located?
That is that.
Well, we did plug in one area, and right now anticipated kind of here within this entire suite on this side, the mayor's suite and
Okay,
personnel, law, finance would all be interconnected. But essentially we do have one space set aside for that. currently.
and you had mentioned the possibility of a secret ninja way for council to leave the building. Is there something for the mayor?
Can I speak to that? Yeah, could you take us back down to the first floor, please? Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that conference room to the north of council chambers there. Our concept in communicating with the design team was that there would be great value in creating a conference room that in essence would be a council workspace, a council workroom. So that would be available for you to meet individually or in small groups prior to a meeting. That would be available for executive sessions. And really, I think most importantly is if you look at the way the building is configured in terms of access, we think that that's a building that could be made available to council members for your use really at most any time. If you wanted to have a constituent meeting in that conference room, you would be issued a fob to allow you to access the building. You would be able to utilize that building. There would be access to restrooms, there on the south side of the lobby, but then we would still be able to secure, the city offices and the upstairs portions of the building. So we felt that not only was that a valuable space, to council, but, also for smaller community meetings. There's a lot of instances where people are looking for a room of that size. And we just think that that's really versatile and a good use of that space.
Thank you.
Answer your question, I don't know if we have quite as sophisticated an escape strategy for.
Well,
Mayor
I
Mike.
would imagine that you would not want to divulge that in a public meeting. The mayor would want to keep that a secret.
That's a good point.
So what's the anticipated capacity of the council chamber?
So total size would be 120, including council. So yeah, 80 for public, essentially.
So
An
80,
additional
yeah,
20 for.
in addition to.
Oh, and one other question, sorry. With you're talking about demolition of the house over here. would there be sufficient boundary between the parking lot that would go there and the residential area? Be some foliage or something, cut down on the
Buffer.
noise.
That-
Those little round trees, is that
That's
bushes
Yep.
or such?
what? Band?
Yeah, you're 18, 20.
Okay,
20.
I appreciate that.
Any other questions, comments? I think we got maybe one more slide or two.
I'd like to ask a quick question, if that's okay. I want to say you guys, I think you've done an excellent job here so far. I just had a quick question on, you mentioned truncating Oak Street there. I know I believe there's like a library return on that side of their building. I just didn't know if that's been a discussion point with them, if we see any issues with that, if there'd been any thought to that.
Let Lori ask.
Great point, Andy. And yes, that is a heavily utilized area. We would plan to, again, this is kind of the first, viewing of this. And so proceeding from here would be more detailed plans. And certainly we would work with the Wood County Public Library on access to that book drop, or, just talking about our shared neighborly sites in general. So certainly that's on our radar.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You had mentioned the look being grand, but not too grand or not ornate. And there's kind of and I'm revealing my degree of architecture experience, that it seems like some government buildings have a more of a government-y kind of a look. Is that the plan here? So when somebody walks in, they're going to know that they're in, well, they'll know from the sign, but they're going to know that it's got that feel to it.
We have not had much detailed conversations about the character of the interior. My anticipation is that we would follow the approach that we've taken on the exterior, which is to honor and restore the old, complement it with compatible but more contemporary moves. And it ought to have a strong kind of institutional character about it. It is a city building, and we expect it to serve the city of Bowling Green for generations. And so, capturing that kind of character, it's important, I think, when people are coming into a public meeting, that they have kind of a sense of decorum about them, and you want to communicate that in the architecture and the quality of the space, but we haven't gotten real deep into like what those finishes will be like exactly.
But it is a goal,
Yes.
as opposed
yeah.
to something that's like antiseptic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
great. Thank you.
I have only one question. I'm recalling back several years when we had Mr. John Fawcett as our city administrator, and we were talking about the need for a new building back at that time too. And he mentioned to us that were there to be an emergency, that this would be the building that would be like the command central or the command station where all information would come from. I'm wondering if that is still the case, are we still intended to be a command building? And secondly, was that taken into account in the design of this, that it would have to be used perhaps for that in that way? And I don't know that there would be any changes that if it were used that way, other than, be super, super sturdy in case of a tornado or,
Right.
fireproof in parts of it.
Yeah, I would say that has not been a strong element of our discussions up to this point. Generally, and it might be worth chatting with public safety. I don't know if you guys have thoughts about that. Because usually you want like an emergency command center for your community.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Andy, we have discussed that internally, and as Ray had mentioned, we haven't really, with the design team, dived too far into, interior spaces. But internally, we have discussed the need to create, that crisis center or command center that you talked to. We think that there are a number of conference rooms in the building that could serve that purpose in an emergency. And we've also discussed that when we get more into the development of the mechanical and the electrical systems, we'll make certain that we identify that area and make sure it's connected to the emergency generators so that electric and power and that sort of thing would be available in that circumstance.
Okay.
But yeah, we have talked about it internally.
Okay.
Yeah, based on our experience with other operations centers, we could certainly put that as an overlay,
Mhm. For some reason, when I think of command centers, I think of them being in the basement, and I don't know why I think that, but I just do. And when you said that we weren't going to have a basement, because there has been flooding problems, and not only this building downtown, but other buildings downtown, I was thinking, well, there goes a space for a command center that.
Well, Sandy, if you think of it more as a capability than a structure, then this building lends itself to adaptability like
Well,
that. in
certainly,
my
I mean, if
view,
we could
so-
have done it in this building if we had to.
Right, it's a
it wouldn't-
capability, not
yeah.
a structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally, we're looking at obviously structural stability, but usually communications infrastructure and power redundancy and
Mhm,
reliability.
mhm.
And those are the types of factors that you want to make sure are overlaid and that you understand what that plan is and the types of tools that, those, the people in charge are going to need when they set up their command center. So again, I think that, we can certainly do that overlay if that's appropriate for this building. Oh. So one thing that we were charged with was, this is a building that should, look forward and serve, future generations. This is a long-term vision for this building. And it ought to have strong overlay of sustainability, environmental responsibility, energy efficiency, and the like. And what we have done, the kind of premier program for evaluating buildings is LEED, which is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. You're probably mostly familiar with that. It's a program administered by the U.S. Green Building Council. And it's a scoring system that lays out the important categories, site design, site ecology, energy and atmosphere, water efficiency, and the like. And it encourages initiatives that make your building greener. And so we have tried to build in a level of quality into this building, into the planning of the building, to achieve a LEED Silver level of certification, and have mapped a bit of a plan to get there. A lot of this is details that we would work out, as the design moves forward, but we want to let you know that we do have our eye on that. You've got a combined sewer here, so building in some detainage and trying to keep that burden off of that combined sewer system is very important. Restoring green space, having a highly efficient building in terms of layout and supporting its function, in addition to being highly efficient in terms of its fenestration, its insulation qualities, the efficiency of its systems are all things that we envision and we have an eye toward, but they're details that we work out along the way. But that's kind of built into the assumptions about the building design and the budgeting at this point. Speaking of which,
So as you've heard, we haven't really dove into a lot of the details, some of the things like interior finishes and those types of things. So we're really at a conceptual level. So we took the approach of, I will say, a detailed square foot estimate. So we didn't just look at it as a whole and just threw a, a square foot dollar figure at it. We actually looked at assemblies where we didn't necessarily go through and take off the number of interior doors as an example. We did look at it, using historical data for the area with cost. We went through a very detailed square foot cost analysis of this based on, varying assemblies that were being used in the facility. Some other things that we did when it comes to demolition and then the like the stone repair at the existing post office, we actually met on site with contractors that we've worked with in the past so that we could get their input and their, so some of those dollar figures I think are dialed in pretty close. But just to go down the numbers here, demolition, we're looking at around $426,250, and that'll demo this building, demo the house, and also shoring up that existing front facade of the post office, and then demoing the remainder of it, including bringing infill to fill that basement. Site costs are running around $877,300. The building itself is around a little over 7.3 million. Soft cost, which would include A&E fees, it would include furniture, permit cost, any sort of surveys or anything like that that would need to be a part of the project. We've got those sitting at around 1.1 million. And then we've got a contingency, both a design contingency and a construction contingency figured in this, just because we're at the conceptual stage of right around $1 million for that, which puts our total estimate at this time at 10.89 million. So just under 11 million is where we're at on the budget. You guys have anything to add on? I know we've already kind of had a question and answer session up to this point, but I'd like to open it up if there's any other questions that anybody would like to bring up, or any questions on the estimate that you would like us to touch on.
Big one. Sometimes when we show, these building models, you see windows and doors and all that, it gives you the sense that there is a lot of detail there. And the exercise here is kind of big vision. And we don't have a lot of detail about like what the systems are going to be, or how high the ceilings are, or what the interior finishes are. So as we present these numbers, those are pretty big round numbers. That's a pretty good size contingency. But a lot of that is because we just don't know a lot. There's a lot left to do in terms of working that out. So I just wanted to kind of like frame the parameters of expectations moving forward. This is a high level overview in terms of.
It would be scary if you didn't have a caveat with your estimate. I had to step out for a minute. Was there any discussion of phasing?
Yes.
I missed it, and don't repeat it. If I missed it, I'll just catch up.
No, and I appreciate you asking the question, and that's definitely something we looked at. And the intent is to keep this building in operation as long as possible. So the plan would be to demo the house first. That would give an area for the contractors to have a lay down area. And then we would move to demoing the front building, and then they could start the building pad and actually start constructing that, all the while still being able to use this. Now you're going to get to a point during construction, just because this is taking, a good piece of the new parking lot area that we're going to have to transition out and take care of this demo. Those details will be worked out a little more as we progress in the design of the project. However, we did take that into consideration, and we do have that included, those additional costs included in that estimate.
You might want to put an extra line item to bring in some income. I think there would be a number of people that would like to be involved with the demolition.
Okay.
Maybe with a sledgehammer or something.
And how much time would it take to construct your plan?
The building itself, the demo of the senior center and the addition um, probably 15 months, I'm say. From the time you break ground to the time you're moving in. The detailing, I mean, the architecture and engineering services are probably 7 months, maybe 8 to get through, each of the progressive phases of design and assemble the documents and get them out for bids. And we do have, on the back end of the project, the last thing that happens is this building comes down.
Mhm.
We move people in, then this building comes down, and then there's a
first.
parking lot to build. So you probably got some months on the back end. So you're pushing a couple years of total construction, on the back end of like 7 or 8 months worth of design work.
Are you anticipating then this building staying fully functional until it moves?
Until you move
So the
in.
only thing that will there be a gap on is parking.
Right, and I mean, we had some discussion of that. I think you've got some space as we go south, right? You've got some that you share with the library, I believe, and then there's some lots.
But we would have to look for office space in the short term, only parking.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're probably asking your people to walk a few blocks.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
good,
right.
good answer. Thank
And that
you.
would be a nice cost saving to have this building usable during the time of construction so that we don't have to be renting out someplace else.
And you've
Could I
got
ask a question
people
from,
that overlook construction,
Okay.
from these windows, so.
could I ask a question from, this is Neocles Leontis? I'm I think I've got the mic on. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, you said you haven't gone much into detail on systems, but you have started to lay out the some of the environmental issues. Have you talked at all about heating and cooling? Because there's been a lot of talk about a geothermal system based on the bedrock that we have, which has good heat conductance. So is that, are you looking at that, or is that still something that we'd have to think about
we have
retrofitting, or what's the deal on that?
We've discussed geothermal. At this point in the project, we have not gathered enough of information or done enough analysis to feel comfortable making a recommendation. A lot of times soil conductivity is important. So usually we like to get a test boring.
Mhm.
The maintenance of the wells themselves, when it's going underneath a parking lot, is something we need to think about. I mean, we will have this building on the parking lot site on the day you move in. So how many wells we need and where they're located and the conductivity of soil, these are all things that we will need to do the analysis. But I think, we would love to see geothermal work here.
And of course, it's not only about heating, it's also about cooling in the summer, which we're
Yes.
seeing more and more heat in the summer. So that's important cost savings there too.
Right.
Operationally. Okay, thank you.
And another thing I'd say about energy efficiency, the more we can drive the energy footprint of the building down, with investments in
Mhm.
insulation and quality glass and not doing silly things like putting a lot of glass facing south that is not sheltered, and just these just fundamental design issues. The more we can reduce the energy demand of the building, and then when it'll make geothermal more feasible because the load that we're trying to serve is smaller. And these are all things that we'll kind of work through the details of. We're just not at that point where we can put much good data out there or make decisions.
So just a thought occurred to me, since you're blocking off Oak Street, that potentially that could be part of the well. And then there's also the possibility of building a sharing a well field with the library and then retrofitting the library. So, just thinking ahead a little bit here. So
Excellent points. Yes.
Nicholas, while we're on that subject, I would just like to say that sustainability components of this building is a very high priority to the administration. We've talked a lot about that internally, and as we develop to greater detail at design the concepts of the building, we will certainly continue to make that a primary consideration. So thank you for bringing that up. So I think that we can, move a little bit towards concluding here. And I wanted to say thank you to our design team for the thorough work in this comprehensive report. The team has given us a lot to consider as we examine the various options available for the construction of a new city building. Members of City Council and the Board of Public Utilities, I very much look forward to hearing your feedback and answering any questions that you might have. As we look forward to the opportunity to begin discuss this exciting project with the entire Bowling Green community, we will soon begin to share the design concept with the community by posting this evening's presentation on the city website, and we'll also be creating displays that will be set up in public locations in an effort to allow our residents to view and to provide comment. The conclusions of the study reinforce a long-held belief of mine that our current city building has reached the end of its useful life, and also that our community deserves a city building that we can be proud of. A new city building has been a goal of city leaders for many years, and it is most certainly a goal of mine. It is my opinion that now is the time to act. As the staff begins to work on preparing the 2021 budget, it is my intent to include funding necessary to enable the construction of the new city building. I sincerely hope that City Council and the Board of Public Utilities will share our vision for the future of our city building, and that you will also consider the necessary administrative and legislative actions that will allow us to move forward together with this exciting and beneficial project. And thank you for taking the time to meet with us this evening, and really appreciate your consideration of the presentation. With that, I want to once again ask if there are any comments or questions from either board members or council members. We certainly want to answer those as best we're able.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to say that I think this is a golden opportunity. It's an opportunity that some residents might think is a little bit out of line, given the financial impact we have had from COVID-19. However, it also, I believe, is an unforeseen opportunity. We on council know that we're about to retire some of our debt from other capital improvement projects we have, and that's going to be occurring very soon, and that's going to free up some funding for us to use for capital improvements. As a realtor, I know that there has been no better time to make moves up in real estate than during the times right now. I mean, people are getting 2.5% loans on buying new homes. I know that for a fact because I'm selling them to them. And, people are nervous when they move up, when they have a big cost in front of them. But if our community can look at the low interest rate that we could get right now, when you look at what we're going to be paying with inflation in the next 30 years, we're really going to be getting this interest free. And that is an opportunity that we should not pass up. We would be negligent to pass up an opportunity to have almost an interest-free $11 million building. I also see this as a grand opportunity for investment in our community. I'm going to share something that I know that Mike already knows because we've discussed it, and that is this is like having a new business move into Bowling Green saying, we're coming into business or town, we're building an $11 million building, and we're going to bring people in that are going to be working here, they're going to be paying taxes, and all of that comes right back in our community. So we are absolutely investing in Bowling Green, investing in ourselves. And that is something that we've been a little weak in doing. We haven't really spent a lot of capital improvement money on ourselves. We take care of our roads, we take care of what needs to be done, but look how many years we've put off having a decent looking, healthy administration building. It's been way too long. So I just see this as a wonderful opportunity in front of us. And I certainly support us moving forward on this soon, very soon.
Thank you, Sandy.
May I speak?
Yes, Megan, hello.
You can hear me. I'm not sure I'm doing that right.
We
I
can
just
hear
kind of
you.
want to second some of what Sandy, you can hear me?
Yes,
Okay. I just kind of wanted to second some of what Sandy had to say there. And also, finally, I think I've been doing some of this for about 15 years. I was on that ad hoc committee, talked about it when I was on council. We've been talking about it since I've been on the Board of Public Utilities. So I do think it sounds like we're finally at a point where the time is right. And I like that you've addressed keeping it in the downtown, sustainability. I like a lot of what I saw with the preservation of some of the historical part of the building on Main Street there. And I think that's an important element. But also I think what Sandy had to say about the financing with the rates and with some of the long-term debt rolling off the books, I think it really is the time to do it without probably a huge impact to the budget as far as the capital projects going on and off. So I would be, I mean, I'm certainly in support of moving forward in a relatively quick time period.
thank you, Megan.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was quite taken by your opening comments. I think you hit the nail on the head when you said we've just got to take advantage of opportunities when they're presented to us. And I think, as Megan said, this has been discussed for many years. And I think everything has just come together at the right time. The money, the cost, the borrowing opportunities, the fact that the building is what it is, it's not sustainable for the long term. And this opportunity to create a community building that will outlive everybody in this room and not only be there, but provide, I'm especially pleased to see that we'll have a council chambers that can seat more people than we've even had a demand for in this room. I mean, we've had overflow here, but not even to the level that that can handle 120 total. And of course, there'll still be overflow capacity with that. To me, that's a very strong selling point. But the opportunity to borrow again at such a favorable rate, as Sandy pointed out, at a rate that's probably going to be less than the long-term cost of inflation. I think the stars have just aligned at the right time to make this the right decision for this time, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Greg.
I just want to thank everybody. It's obviously a lot of work thus far, not only by all of you that are here, but those that came before. And it's exciting. It looks like you've got the professional expertise as well as the vision. And I really appreciate it. We have a chance to do this right, and it looks like we're heading in the right path. So thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you, Bill. Are there other questions or comments? Very good. Seeing none, we'll bring this meeting to a close. I will just mention, in closing that Joe will soon email all of you the presentation that you've seen this evening. After you have had a chance to review it, if you would like to call us and ask any questions that you might develop, during your review, please feel free to do so. You can contact me, Lori, or Joe individually. We're happy to communicate with you and answer whatever questions that you may have. So thank you all for attending, giving us your time this evening, and we look forward to working together with all of you in the future on this exciting project. Thank you.